Hello, dear friends, and welcome to Cardiac Radio, where we nourish our souls 24/7. And today we're welcoming you to our weekly program, which is on Genesis. It is the fifth book, the last book of Alan Kardec, and we have been focusing on the third part of Genesis. The third part is entitled Predictions. And we've talked about the theory of foreknowledge in the last weeks. And we talked about the predictions in the gospel in its beginning. We last week we covered this very interesting chapter that when Jesus said, "No one is a prophet in his hometown." And I think we all could associate a little bit with that. So today we're going to cover actual predictions that Jesus made in the gospel. And so we will be approximately, we'll see how far we're getting, but we might go from item 3 all the way to approximately 26, including. But before we actually dive right in, first of all, welcome, dear friends. So nice to have you here. Let us go to our PowerPoint and share the screen because we want to go back a little bit so we can tie in and better understand what Jesus was actually doing and where it came from. So let us share the screen here. And we're going here. All right, so let's just quickly check and see whether technology is cooperative. It's always important. So we're going to go quickly to Facebook. It's our best check. Cardiac Radio. And yes, it looks fine. Good, perfect. Okay, dear friends. So you may remember, maybe it was already several months ago, that we talked about second sight. And we find the explanation also in Genesis. But right now, we don't want to go over the whole chapter and go dive deep into second sight. But second sight seems to be pertinent to what we're going over today. And let us go to the Spirit's book. Questions 447 to 454 is a subchapter. It's entitled Second Sight. And there we learn a lot. In lieu of going through the questions, we're just summarizing a few highlights for us to tie our knowledge in. So second sight, this is a sight of the soul. And that sight, that soul sight, so to speak, is beyond the limits of our normal senses. So with our physical body, of course, we know we see with our eyes. But second sight is not with our physical eyes. It's the capacity of the soul to see, and it's not through any specific organ. It's through the perispirit. It's a soul via the perispirit, and it's not localized. The spirit during second sight is in a state of greater freedom. However, the body is not asleep. The eyes become hazy, and there is a form sort of looking without seeing. So when we encounter someone who is in that state of second sight, Allan Kardec, the spirits on high, describe it as that. Eyes become kind of glazed over, and there is a sort of looking without actually seeing. It's not as focused from the external. The faculty is permanent. However, the ability is not. So people usually don't have second sight continuously, even though they have the faculty. So it can come and go, and some have it more so developed than others, and it can be developed through effort. So this is important to know, because that means if we feel like, oh, why not me? I don't have second sight. It's not happening. Well, we can work on it. It goes beyond the scope of our gathering to talk about that, but it's something positive to note. So it can manifest, second sight can manifest at times of illness, when danger approaches, or at times of a crisis. It's essentially like mental overexcitement, and that can cause second sight. It's almost like we are a consciousness out of body, and boom, there it is. The power of second sight can range from a confused sensation to very clear, distinct perceptions. And that is really important later on when we read the predictions by Jesus. Second sight may give us the ability to evaluate another person's moral standing upon meeting them. So we can read other people more acutely, more keenly. So that is a side effect. And when we have a more developed, more highly developed second sight, that's then when we develop the faculty of presentiments. And that ties us in to what we will be talking about. Those are the predictions that Jesus made. So a more developed faculty of second sight allows presentiments. That's when it becomes more refined. In the Spirit's book, question 455, it has a hugely long answer, several pages long, and it's entitled A Theoretical Summary of Somnambulism, Ecstasy, and Second Sight. So we are invited to review that particular chapter of Second Sight, in particular, this theoretical summary, which teaches us so much. It's so important to understand it, not only for our study, but also for us, because we know that we can work on developing second sight more, or if we don't have it yet, to develop it a little bit. So here in that theoretical summary, which again is pages long, we learn that somnambulism, ecstasy, and second sight are no more than varieties or modifications of effects arising from the same cause. So they're manifestations that have one common cause, and that common cause is the attribute of the soul. So it comes from the soul. The cause is the soul. And it depends on the soul's attributes to what degree second sight is more developed or less. And we know already that the more pure a soul is, the more pure a perispirit is, the better the second sight. But let us now switch over to Genesis. And this is not yet our study. This is just to prime us, to help us really being able to digest today's lesson. Now, a few weeks ago, we talked about the theory of foreknowledge, which is part of the prediction chapter in Genesis. It's chapter 16, and it's entitled The Theory of Foreknowledge. Here in summary, we learned that the second sight, this capacity to foretell the future, is more pronounced in dematerialized spirits. These so-called dematerialized spirits are like a man on the mountain. Dematerialized means more pure, less attached to matter, more in tune with God, more aligned with God's will, in a nutshell. And that dematerialized spirit is like a man on the mountain. Now we know when we're walking through our brambly life, we don't always know what's around the corner, right? It's one thorn bush after another sometimes, and we don't really see down the road. However, if we climb up on a mountain, all of a sudden we see it, right? We see that down the road, oh wow, there is going to be a beautiful opportunity to be of service, and we will be beyond the thorn bushes. For this man on the mountain, space and length of time do not exist. Everything is happening right now. And that is when we often hear, it has already happened. So our opportunity of service is already happening for this man on the mountain while we are still stuck in the thorn bush, right? So these are the different perspectives. So for this man on the mountain who has this overview, the events do not unroll sequentially. Beginning and end are all at once. And the extent and the penetration of this man on the mountainside is proportional to his or her purification. So the more purified we are, the more we've done our inner transformational work, and we've had many lifetimes doing the good and so forth and so on. That's when our second side will be more keenly developed. Now, of course, we know that Jesus is our guide and model. And of course, Jesus had this capacity developed to the max compared to us, of anyone who's walked the earth. So he was continuous connection to, he was always this man on the mountain, so to speak, always overlooking and knowing what will happen for us on our level, but what is happening from this person's level up on the mountain. Which explains why Jesus was so capable of making those predictions, right? So I think we're coming around understanding it a little bit better. Now, we are always aspiring to draw closer to Jesus, to become more like him. Now, many, many, many lifetimes, and that is our work, is purifying ourselves, which includes dematerializing our lives. So we're working on releasing our attachments. So the gift of making predictions is consequently not a supernatural, it's not a miracle. It's not a supernatural phenomena. It rests upon the properties of the soul. So it's many lifetimes. It's our own effort and repetition we put into it. It's not a miracle. Which is the good news, because that means we can develop it, right? And it is inherent to the state of spiritualization or dematerialization of the spirit. And we said that already. So a discarnated spirit compared with an incarnated spirit is like a sighted person compared with a blind person. So in that chapter of the theory of foreknowledge, he, of course, Alan Kardec explains that when we are in the flesh, it's like a dark veil that's over us. So having second sight, having this capacity of being able to foretell the so-called future from our perspective is much harder than when we're a spirit. However, not every spirit has the same capacity either, because it depends on the spiritualization or dematerialization of the spirit. So in summary, what determines spirit side or second side? The principle of side lies within the spirit. That's the cause. The effect is the spirit side, is the capacity to foretell the future, to make predictions. And it depends on the moral development of the soul and the state of dematerialization of the perispirit. So let me quickly check and see whether anyone has any questions, because now we will be, we will be switching over to our today's lesson. I want to make sure that we are connected. Let us see here. No questions. Okay, good, guys. Thank you. Glad. So now let us go to Genesis, and we'll be turning to page, it's in this version. I don't know whether there's other versions. It's page 382. It's item 3, and it's entitled The Death and Passion of Jesus. Now, we are going to do a little bit of reading, and you can read along. But we won't read everything. We might be skipping over a little bit because it will be a lot of reading. But here, the death and the passion of Jesus. So here we're finding Jesus making in Matthew, in Luke, it's primarily Matthew and in Luke, predictions about his future. So he says, after the healing of the madman, all were amazed at the great power of God. And when everyone was amazed at what Jesus was doing, he said to his disciples, guard well in your hearts what I'm about to tell you. The Son of Man, which was Jesus, must be delivered into the hands of men. However, they did not understand such language. It was so hidden from them that they could not understand any of it. We find that in Luke 9:43 to 45. Next one, this is Matthew. From then on, Jesus began to reveal to his disciples that he would have to go to Jerusalem, that there he would suffer much from the elders, scribes, and chief priests, that he would be put to death and would rise from the dead on the third day. Prediction, right? He knew it. Then, Matthew, when they were in Galilee, Jesus said to them, the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And he continues. Then, again, Matthew. Now, as Jesus was going to Jerusalem, he took his 12 disciples aside and said to them, we are going to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered to the chief priests and the scribes, who will condemn him to death. Predictions, 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 right? And we know now why he was capable of doing that. Now, next one, again, Luke. Then, taking his 12 disciples aside, Jesus said to them, we're going to Jerusalem, and everything was written by the prophets concerning the Son of Man will be fulfilled, for he will be handed over to the Gentiles. They will mock him and flog him, and he will rise again on the third day. And what did the disciples do? They did not understand what he was saying. Then Matthew, and having finished saying all these things, Jesus said to his disciples, you know that Passover is 2 days from now, and that the Son of Man will be handed over to the crucified. And it continues. And then in Luke again, on the same day, some Pharisees came and said to him, leave this place, for Herod wants to kill you. He responded, go tell that fox, I must still drive out demons and restore health to the sick today and tomorrow, and on the third day I will be consummated in death. All predictions. Jesus knew all along, and now we know why he knew. Because of the capacity of the purity of the state of dematerialization of his soul. So, the persecution of the apostles. Next chapter. This was the death and the passion of Jesus that he predicted. Now we're talking about the persecution of the apostles that Jesus also foresaw. He says in Matthew, guard yourselves against men, for they will make you appear before their councils, and they will flog you in their synagogues, and on account of me you will be presented to governors and kings to serve as witnesses to them as well as the Gentiles. So he predicted that they would be flogged, that they would be mistreated. Then in John, he says, they will throw you out of the synagogues, and the time will come in which those who kill you will believe they're doing something pleasing to God. They will treat you like that because they know neither my Father nor me. And then in Luke again, he says, you will be betrayed and handed over to the magistrates by your fathers and mothers, your brothers, your relatives, and your friends, and they will put many of you to death. You will be hated by everyone on account of my name. And we know this was true, right? Early Christians. That was in Luke. And then yes. So here we go. He not only foresaw his own death and passion, but he also predicted the persecution of the apostles. Then we continue to the next chapter. Unrepentant cities. Jesus continues with his predictions. So he says, then he began to reproach the cities in which he had performed many miracles, for they had not repented. So this is interesting. They had not repented. We know from the penal code in heaven and hell, first step always for us to undo our past wrongs is repentance. It's this admittance before God we've done wrong. It's absolutely being honest, and it comes from the heart. Has to come from the heart. So here Jesus speaks to that. He says, for they had not repented. Then he continues, woe to you, Chorazin, and woe to you, Bethsaida. Now these are cities. For if the miracles that I performed in your midst had been performed in Tyre and Sidon, which are also cities, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. Therefore I declare to you that on the day of judgment, Tyre and Sidon will be treated less harshly than you. So he was saying essentially that the unbelieving Jews in Chorazin and Bethsaida would be treated more harshly than the unbelieving Gentiles in Tyre and Sidon. Why? Because they knew less. Let's continue before we talk about that too much. And you, Capernaum, now he addresses Capernaum, will you always be lifted up to heaven? You shall be brought down to the depths of hell. For if the miracles that were performed in your midst had been performed in Sodom, another city, it would perhaps have remained until today. Therefore, I declare to you that on the day of judgment, the country of Sodom, will be treated less harshly than you. Matthew. So, what was he saying here? It was that Capernaum, which falls into a Jewish city, right, alongside of Chorazin and Bethsaida, those were the unbelieving Jews. They wouldn't believe him. Remember, we did last week the chapter where he said, at home, a prophet won't be recognized. Well, Capernaum was kind of his home. He wasn't recognized. People weren't following him. So he says, Capernaum, will you always be lifted up to heaven? No, because they displayed the sin of indifference. They were indifferent to Jesus. So the judgment imposed against the moral abomination is less than against the spiritual indifference of Capernaum. The spiritual indifference of Chorazin, Bethsaida, and particularly the people in Capernaum, which were the unbelieving Jews, that was the indifference, the spiritual indifference to them, is worse than the moral abomination on behalf of Chorazin, Bethsaida, and Sodom. Jesus makes plain that people who are the most blessed by God will receive the worst consequence if they reject the blessings. So this is what we're learning here with the unrepentant cities, because all of them were unrepentant. But there's a difference. Are we seeing that? Those who know more are held more accountable. We know that. We know that from the Spirit's book, right? The more we know, the more we study, the more we will be held accountable. If we now show spiritual indifference to the teachings, even though we know them, our consequence will be harsher than those who have no idea, who are just not educated. They're not morally there. So that was that chapter. That was item 14. We're moving on, friends. Now we're going to the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. More predictions. When Jesus went out of the temple to leave, his disciples approached him to point out to him the structure and grandeur of that building. However, Jesus said to them, "Do you see all these buildings? Verily, verily, I say to you, they will all be destroyed, so that no one stone will be left upon another." Another prediction. He predicted that these temples would be destroyed in Matthew. Then, in Luke, he says, having drawn close to Jerusalem and seeing the city, he wept for it. He wept. Jesus wept for the city, saying, "Oh, if only you could realize what could give you peace. But now it is all hidden from your eyes. Therefore a time shall come, unfortunately for you, in which your enemies will surround you with trenches. They will dash you to the ground, you and your children who are with you, and they will not leave one stone upon another, for you did not acknowledge the time in which God had visited you. So here he's predicting what's going to happen to Jerusalem. Harsh, right? But it's the consequence of our indifference. Then he says, so this was Luke 19, now in Luke 13 he says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, who kills prophets and stones those who are sent to you. How many times have I wanted to gather your children together like hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you did not want it. The time is at hand in which your house will become deserted. Verily, verily, I tell you that you will not see me again until you say, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Spiritual indifference. He's foreseeing problems for Jerusalem. And of course, we know they became true. Then he goes to Luke again. When you see an army surrounding Jerusalem, you will know that its destruction is at hand. Those days shall be days of vengeance, so that everything written in the scriptures may be fulfilled. This country shall be oppressed with ills, and the wrath of heaven shall fall upon this people. They shall be put to the edge of the sword. They shall be led captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be treaded upon by the feet of the Gentiles until the time of the nations has been fulfilled. Another prediction in Luke. And of course we know it was the truth. And then again in Luke, he says, Jesus on the way to his death. Now he was followed by a large crowd of people who were wailing and weeping, but Jesus turned to them and said, Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and your children. For the time shall come when you will say, Blessed are the barren, the wombs that have never given birth to children, and the breasts that have never nursed. They shall say to the mountains, Fall upon us, and to the hills, Cover us. For if the green wood is treated like this, how will the dry wood be treated? We can only breathe. All right. Now, let us continue. Alan Kardec has a few words to share now. Before we go there, we just want to say, so right now we whipped through really fast the death and passion of Jesus, how he predicted it, in how many places in the gospel he talked about it to the disciples who couldn't understand what he was talking about. Then we talked about the persecution of the apostles he predicted. He predicted the downfall of the unrepentant cities, and he predicted the destruction of the temple and in Jerusalem and Jerusalem. So here is what Alan Kardec tells us. The faculty of foreseeing the future. The faculty of foreseeing future things is one of the soul's attributes. And we just rehearsed that. We know that. And it is explained by the theory of foreknowledge. Jesus possessed it as well as all the other attributes to an eminent degree. So, because his soul was so highly developed, he had this capacity, we want to say continuously, to be up on this mountain, having this view, knowing what is going to happen. And the choice of words that are pointing into the future that we just chose, what is going to happen, is just from our perspective. Of course, when we are in that space of second sight up on the mountain, that's the picture we're holding, it's all happening at the same time. It's not about the future, right? So we need to keep that in mind. He could therefore foresee the events that would take place after his death without there being anything supernatural about the phenomenon. And that we need to keep in mind, because we studied so-called miracles and it turned out that none of them are miracles because they can be explained. Same thing with the foresight, with the foretelling. The second side, it's not a miracle. Okay. So there's nothing supernatural about the phenomenon, which we see being reproduced right before our eyes in the most ordinary circumstances. Anything that can be reproduced is not a miracle. A miracle would be a one-time event, which is one of the aspects of the definition of miracles. It is not rare for individuals to state precisely the moment in which they will die. It is not rare, according to Alan Kardec, that individuals can predict the moment of their death. Their soul in the state of detachment is like the man on top of the mountain. Remember, we said another way where the soul is detached from the body, at least slightly, is in moments of peril. It comprehends the road to be traveled and sees its end. So now he's talking about the moment of discarnation. Such was even more the case with Jesus, who, having full awareness of the mission he had come to fulfill, knew that death by torture was the necessary outcome for him. Spirit side, which was continuous in him. So spirit side was continuous in Jesus because of the quality of his soul, as well as the reading of thought, must have shown him the circumstances and the inevitable time. For the same reason, he could foresee the destruction of the temple and Jerusalem, the misfortunes that would befall the city inhabitants, and the dispersion of the Jews. Isn't it fantastic that we, thanks to Spiritism, thanks to Alan Kardec, have this faculty of knowing why? It's not blind faith, it's not miraculous. It just can be beautifully explained. What a blessing. All right, we're moving on. The curse against the Pharisees. This is item 22. So here John the Baptist said to the Pharisees and Sadducees, "You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee the wrath that must fall upon you? Therefore, produce fruit worthy of repentance, and do not think about saying amongst yourselves, 'We have Abraham as our father.' For I declare to you that God can make these very stones give birth to sons of Abraham. The axe has already been put to the root of the trees. Every tree, therefore, that does not produce good fruits shall be cut down and thrown into the fire." We read that in Matthew. And then he continues. And this is now, let's see. This is now also in Matthew. So this was Matthew 3, verse 7 to 10, and this is Matthew 23, verse 13 to 36. He says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees." So he echoes that. "Hypocrites, because you shut the kingdom of heaven to men. Because you yourselves shall not enter, and yet you oppose those who desire to enter. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because under the pretext of long prayers you devour the houses of widows. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you travel land and sea to win a convert. Woe to you, blind leaders, who say, if a man swears by the temple, it means nothing. But whoever swears by the gold of the temple must fulfill his oath. So now he's pointing towards the hypocrisy. It's the materialism, right? It is swearing by the temple, the actual structure. And we know that that's not the way, right? And it's swearing by the gold of the temple, which is materialistic items. We already know that's not the way, right? How foolish and blind you are. What should be worth more, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? And if a man, you say, swears by the altar, it means nothing. So here he's pretty much attacking the Pharisees, for whom the temple, the gold of the temple, and the altars were more important than actually walking the talk. How blind you are! What should be worth more, the gift of the altar that sanctifies the gift? Therefore, he who swears by the altar swears by the altar and everything that is upon it. And whoever swears by the temple swears by the temple and the one who inhabits it. And he who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who is seated upon it. So that's the path. Swear by God and not the materialistic, the material aspects, the churches, the temples, the stones, the mortar, the gold, the altars. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, who pay a tenth of your mint, dill and cumin, but have abandoned what is most important in the law. And what is most important? Justice, mercy, and faith. These are what you should practice. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you clean the outside of the cup and plate, but on the inside you're full of greed and impurity. And hopefully we'll see how much of a Pharisee we still have in us. It's also a therapeutic moment for us to kind of soul search and ask ourselves, do we clean our cups on the outside only? Are we all polished and beautiful, and then on the inside it's all moldy, all the spider webs, the cobwebs? So this is another invitation for our inner transformation, to look within, right, friends? Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside appear beautiful to men's eyes, but which on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and every kind of decay. Hence, on the outside you appear to be just, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, who build tombs for the prophets and decorate the graves of the righteous, saying, if we had lived at the time of our fathers, we would not have associated with those who spilled the blood of the prophets. So we're pretending to be better. Excuse me. So he continues, and then he says, it's a long section. Verily, verily, I say to you, shall all this to you that all this shall befall this present generation. So then he makes so he criticizes, essentially points out what is wrong about the Pharisees, and then he makes the prediction. He says, finish filing up the measures of your fathers, you serpents, you brood of vipers, how will you avoid being condemned to hell? Therefore I will send you prophets. Now he makes the prediction, Jesus. I will send you prophets, wise men, and scribes, and you will kill some, crucify others, and you will whip others in your synagogues and persecute them from city to city, so that upon you will fall all the innocent blood that has been spilled on the earth, from the blood of Abel, the righteous, to the blood of Zechariah, son of Benkiah, whom you killed between the temple and the altar. Verily, verily, I say to you, that all of this shall befall this present generation. Law of cause and effect, right? So this Pharisee section would be a good would be an invitation to read again, because we don't want to be Pharisees any longer, right, friends? We want to be beyond that. This happened 2,000 years ago, 2,020 years ago. So we think it's time to shift, right? So then he continues by saying, let's see what time. My word shall not pass away. So now in Matthew, he says, then his disciples approached him and said, did you know then when the Pharisees heard what you said, they were scandalized by it? But he answered, every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted shall be uprooted. So this is important, right? Everything we plant that is not in alignment with God's will be uprooted. So then let us not be surprised when we have moments where we are shattered or shocked that we're on the wrong path, essentially. We have earned a redirection treatment, cure, right? And so here he says it, every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted shall be uprooted. Never mind them, they're blind leading the blind. If a blind person leads another, they both will fall into a pit. He says that in Matthew 15, verse 12 to 14. Now, Alan Kardec gives us a few words to this section. So as we can notice, this part of the chapter has a lot of examples. After we understand the mechanism, now we're being presented with the examples. So now Alan Kardec says something about my word shall not pass away. Jesus' words shall not pass away, for they will be true for all times. His moral code, Jesus' moral code will be eternal. And we know that, right? 2,000 years ago. We're still working hard to be more like Jesus. We're still even trying to understand it. And we're trying to practice it. We're not trying to practice, we're practicing it. So it's true, his moral code will be eternal because it's the truth. It's only one truth, ultimately, because it contains the conditions of the good that led men and women to their eternal destiny. It's filled with goodness, with love. So Jesus' moral code will be eternal because it contains the conditions of the good. It is leading us to our eternal destiny. That's the invitation. However, have his words come down to us free from interpolations and false interpretations? And now this is interesting, right? Have his words come down to us free from interpolations and false interpretations? We already know the answer, right? Have all Christian sects grasped their true spirit? Have none of them deviated from their true meaning as a result of preconceptions and of ignorance of the laws of nature? Have none of them made of them an instrument of control to serve ambition and material interests? A stepping stone, not for ascension to heaven, but for ascension on the earth. So this is vital. So we know that Jesus' moral code is eternal. We know that it contains the condition, it's all just goodness. We know the invitation is to lead us to our eternal destiny, towards God. But has his moral code, his words, been grasped and understood? Has it been adulterated? Yes, it has. Has it been grasped and understood? No. It has been interpreted many different ways. Have all Christian sects grasped the truth? No. Have they become an instrument of control of ambition and material interests, a stepping stone for ascension on earth rather than ascension towards heaven? Yes. Unfortunately. And actually even worse, right? Wars have been waged in the name of dogma, beliefs, interpretations. Have all of them proposed as a rule of conduct the practicing of the virtues that Jesus made the express condition for salvation? Are they all exempt from the reproach he directed at the Pharisees of his time? Right? So we just went over all the list of reproaches that Jesus expressed towards the Pharisees, and he made it so easy for us. All we have to do, that's why we said a minute ago, let's read over it again. Let us make a list of what Jesus told us. He makes it so easy. He literally spoon feeds us. He makes it so easy to tell us of what not to do in that section in Matthew. So this is for us personally. And when we look at the history, have these Christian sects been practicing the virtues of Jesus? Are they exempt of the reproaches he directed at the Pharisees? No, right? Finally, are they all in theory as well as in practice the pure expression of his doctrine? No, right? Unfortunately. Since truth is one, and here it is, right? We're studying the spirit of truth in the evenings on Cardiac Radio with Dr. Vanessa Anzalone. Truth is such a hot subject these days, we want to say. But TL and Cardiac helps us to understand. Truth is one. It cannot be found in contradictory statements. So this is really important. Truth is one. It cannot be found in contradictory statements. And Jesus spoke the truth. And Jesus could not have intended to give a double meaning to his words. He didn't. Therefore, if different sects contradict one another, if some regard as true what others condemn as heresy, there is no possibility for all of them to possess the truth. Ouch, right? That cuts right through it all. 2020 years of strife. Alan Kardec just puts the needle in the balloon and poof, the air goes out. Right, friends? It's so true. We're reading it again. If different sects contradict one another, if some regard as true what others condemn as heresy, there is no possibility for all of them to possess the truth. We want to venture to say this also applies to other subjects, perhaps even science. But of course, that's always in development, so it changes. Jesus spoke the truth. There's only one truth. If all had grasped the true meaning of the gospel, they would have met on the same ground, and there would have been no sects, and there would have been peace and love. That which shall not pass away is the true meaning of Jesus' words. Remember, this subchapter, item 24, is my word shall not pass away. Now we know why he said that. My words shall not pass away. Why? Because there's only one truth, and he spoke the truth. His moral code is eternal. That which shall not pass away is the true meaning of Jesus' words. That which shall pass away is what people have built upon the erroneous meaning they have given to those very words. I'll say that again. That which shall pass away is what people have built upon the erroneous meaning they have given to those very words of Jesus. And we're guilty of it too. We've been guilty of it in past incarnations. Now we can't go back and undo it, and there's no reason to feel guilty about it. We didn't know any better. But in this incarnation, we need to do our very best to guard ourselves against that. Since Jesus' mission was to bring God's thought to humankind, Only his pure doctrine can be the expression of that thought. That is why he said, every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted shall be uprooted. We are not seeing yet quite the outcome of all the interpretations, the different Christian sects, the different churches, and what will happen to them. We know it's already happened. We don't see it yet, but this is really vital information. Jesus' mission was to bring God's thought to humankind in its purity. The truth, only one truth. His moral code is immortal. Anything that is less than the truth, and there can't be any discussion, there can't be different interpretations, but there are, and that shall pass away. Only his words shall not pass away. Only his pure doctrine can be the expression of that thought. That is why he said, every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted shall be uprooted. On some level, it's a hopeful ending that we will be pausing at. Because we can have absolute faith that nothing that God hasn't planted will long-term survive. Dear friends, let us stop sharing and connect. Here we are. All right. Let us see who is here. Yes. Hi, Mark, and hi, Lisa. And there's a bunch more people, so please say hello. So let us end with, let's call it a little bit of a homework. Let us look at the Matthew section. You can find it in Genesis on pages 387, 397, the curse against the Pharisees, to guard ourselves against being a Pharisee. And let us really make a vow to stay very close to Jesus's words, the truth, and not create spins on it that will cause conflict. Because we know that conflict only comes out of our interpretations, but not out of the immortal messages that Jesus brought to planet Earth. And that's why we call him our guide and model. Thank you so much, Alan Kardec, for doing this fantastic work. And of course, thank you for all the spirits that stood by his side. But most and foremost, let us thank Jesus for coming to this planet and helping us so tremendously. And our invitation to keep it pure, to stick to the truth, and to practice it every single day. As Emmanuel says in chapter 10, to feel goodness, to visualize goodness, to mold goodness with all the resources we have at hand. And thank you so much, dear friends, for joining. Next week, we will continue with our study, the cornerstone. Wow, we wonder what that is. Only one flock and only one shepherd. So it will be the continuation of this chapter, Predictions in the Gospel. So God willing, we will see you next week, same time. God bless you, and thank you for joining.